Hello, National University Academy students, economics students. This is Mr. Goyette. I wanted to review with you the Unit 5 vocabulary terms and key concepts so you can ready yourselves for the quizzes, tests, discussion, and weekly chats that we do every Wednesday at 9, including you, Calvin. So I'm going to go ahead and show those vocabulary terms to you right now. Let's begin with this listing here. So you can see those: GDP, gross domestic product, PCEs, personal consumption expenditures, non-market activities, underground economy, expansion, peak, contraction, recession, depression, and trough. Your second group up at the top there, you have frictional unemployment, inflation, cost push inflation, wage price inflation, and cyclical employment. Let's get into that now, so we can go over these concepts with
some grasp and knowledge while discussing them in class. So I'm going to begin with the discussion of GDP. Now your textbook on page 229 gets right into it with this definition of the NIPAs. Now what's an NIPA? Quit throwing acronyms at me. Microeconomists use measures called national income and product accounts, NIPAs, to track production. One of these is gross domestic product. Now, with gross domestic product, total production or output is one measure of an economy's strength. The most widely used NIPA, what's NIPA again? National Income and Product Accounts. The most widely used NIPA is gross domestic product, GDP, the total dollar value of all final goods and services produced within the country during one calendar year. So that's GDP. Now, what goes into measuring GDP? Let's talk about that for a second, because that gets a little interesting. Really, GDP, it's an imperfect science, because it as a social science, it's going to have a lot of variables in there. To avoid double counting, economists measure gross domestic product by looking at final goods and services, and you want to take note of that. Your purchase of CDs, let's say you go out and buy a bunch of compact discs, that is music. You don't go out and get certificates of deposit as an investment. So this question is kind of has a double meaning there, but you go buy some CDs because you want to pick up some music or go to a concert or something. This is not. This will be counted in GDP as part of personal consumption expenditures, PCEs. That's one of the terms up there on the board. PCEs, personal consumption expenditures. GDP figures are sometimes inaccurate because economists use estimates. And when they do their sampling, sometimes their sampling is imperfect. It's not demographically skewed. You can also have problems where the process of gathering the data is so slow that it leads to inaccuracies, because as you're gathering the data, the market is changing. So all of these can lead to problems with gauging or assessing, measuring GDP. Child care performed by a relative, for example, would not reflect in GDP because GDP does not measure non-market activities, and that goes into your definition of non-market activities. You didn't scan your ATM card when your aunt came over to watch your son or your nephew or something. That was something that was done on a kind of bartering. Okay, well, hey, I'll come over and mow your lawn on Tuesday if you watch my kids today. So there was an exchange there, but that's not something that's going to fit into GDP. Drug dealing is not reflected in GDP because it's part of the underground economy. So our underground markets are pretty big. There are some estimates that put some of our drug markets well beyond some of our legitimate businesses in the millions and billions of dollars. And if you've been following the drug wars here in San Diego and Tijuana, you know that it's not only a big business, it's a pretty gnarly one and pretty terribly bloody one right at present. But this underground market is not measured by GDP. This is another area where GDP will not assess the exchange of money because of that. Which national income and product account measures the total dollar value
of all final output produced factors and production owned by residents in the country. That's going to be gross national product, not GDP. GDP is different than gross domestic product, or GNP is different than GDP. Which phase of the business cycle is characterized by a slowdown in business? This is contraction. So a particular business experiences a slowdown, or a particular sector, tech sector, for example, slows down. So not many people are buying computers, not many people are buying cars because gas prices went up. This can be a contraction. It may not be a recession or a depression because it's temporary. There will be we'll move out of it and rebound. In the United States, involvement in wars has been accompanied by periods of expansion. That's because you have this boom in the economy. People are building tanks. They're building weapon systems. They're putting people to work in factories. The people that are going to work in factories have to have somebody watch their kids while they're at work for these long shifts. So there's daycare. There's healthcare because people get hurt on the job. So somebody's going to go in. They're going to go to the hospital. They're going to get help. So all these things are going to keep the economy going. People are moving. So it's going to stimulate and get things going. Which of the following factors have an impact on productivity growth? Now, productivity growth is you're going to see it in a level of available technology, the quality of capital goods available per worker, and the education and skill level of the workforce. All those things are going to go into the productivity growth. If you have a skilled workforce, that's why your teachers and your parents and many people in society are trying to push you to do a little bit better, to have your skills, and worrying about where our country's going. If we are a productive society as a whole, we'll do better in taking care of one another. And of course, the skill level of your workforce, the ability level of your workforce, and education is going to really increase the quality of life for everyone in your country. Even if you have the occasional deadbeat, if most of your country is educated and the skill level is high, people will do well. The quality of capital goods available per worker is important because those goods and services are going to help them live a better life. During the population surveys, one of the things that the text talks about is that if a person has a job but is out of work because of an illness, they're still considered employed. If a person is paid for 1 hour of work, technically they're employed. So in the census numbers, if I worked 1 hour that day, and I'm working 1 hour each day, I couldn't afford to pay for my rent or pay for my house or pay for my kids' meals, but technically I'm employed. So this is often called the working poor, because you don't end up as unemployed in the census numbers, but you're really not contributing any significantly to the success and well-being of your own family or yourself. Full employment is 95%. You think full employment should be 100%, but the technical definition of full employment actually means 95% of your workforce are able-bodied people, those people who are of age to work and are in good health. That's your workforce. 95% of those people are out there working. That's called full employment. I'm going to stop here so I keep it under 10 minutes, and I will load these to YouTube shortly.